As on most Sunday afternoons, I have a story for us today. This story is called The Beautiful Tiger. It's by one of my colleagues, the Reverend Christopher Busey. There once was a beautiful and powerful tiger. One day, she was captured by a mean and cruel man who put her into a cage. The man kept the cage in the jungle not far from his house. And every day he would bring a bowl of water and some food for the lonely tiger. Sometimes the tiger would see her own reflection in the water and would say, I must be a beautiful tiger." When the man heard her, he would lie and tell her, "No, you are not a beautiful tiger. You're very ugly. You're a pitiful creature." Sadly, the tiger would believe the man. Some days, after she ate her food, she would walk back and forth in her small cage and feel energy and power moving through her body. And she would say, I must be a powerful tiger." When the man heard her say this, he would lie to her and tell her, "No, you are weak and puny. You're a pitiful creature." Sadly, the tiger would believe him. Then one day, when the man was nowhere around, a lion happened to walk by the cage. The lion saw the tiger inside and spoke to her, "Beautiful and powerful tiger, what are you doing lying about in a cage?" "Do not make fun of me," replied the tiger. "I know that I am neither beautiful nor powerful." "I'm not making fun of you," said the lion. "You are surely the most beautiful and powerful tiger I have ever seen. I'm only surprised to see you lying here when you're clearly strong enough to break out of the cage." "You really think I could break out of here?" asked the tiger. "Quite easily, I should think," said the lion. The tiger was not so sure at first. She had been told so many times that she was a weak and pitiful creature. But suddenly it seemed that she could feel the energy and strength moving through her body. She began to pace back and forth in her cage. Almost without thought, she leapt against the door, and it flew open without any resistance. Once outside, she seemed dazed. "That cage didn't even have a lock on it," she said. "I spent so much of my life stuck in here, and the door wasn't even locked." The lion looked at her with soft brown eyes and said, "Those kinds of traps don't need locks. For it is the lies we believe that keep us in our cages, and it is the truth that sets us free." As we ponder this story in our hearts and our minds and our bodies, I would invite us into a time of community. Each of us has our own cages that we are trying to break out of, our own messages and lies, our own experiences in the world And yet when we come together here in this community, we bring those with us knowing that we are more together than we are alone. There's something special about being in a community like this that helps us understand the world in maybe a different way than we would if we were just out there trying to make sense of things alone. And I think the choir is one of those special places where we really find those connections. So thank you all for sharing that piece here this morning. Our theme for June is one that I find a little challenging. It's living, liberating love through the practice of freedom. But what really is freedom? I hear it, and about 10 different things bounce through my head. And then I go looking on YouTube, and then suddenly 30 things are bouncing through my head. So I want to share a few of those bouncing things. If some of you may have seen in the Thursday update this week, a fun little 2-minute clip on what is freedom, with a number of different ideas and philosophies. So I want to start with sharing that here again in case you missed it, just to get your mind buzzing as much as mine is.
What is freedom?
Mathematics. Abstraction frees you from the shackles of reality.
What is freedom?
Art. Abstraction frees you from the shackles of reality.
What is freedom?
Stories. Giving a life a narrative allows you to feel as if you're in control of it. That's why my job is so important. All stories need an ending.
What is freedom?
People view it as the ability to plot your own course, but every time you pick a path, 1,000 other potential choices fade into impossibility.
Simply exercising your freedom reduces it.
What is freedom?
Sustainability. The forest will never make me rich, but I can live how I want, secure in the knowledge that it will always provide enough.
What is freedom?
I don't know. Am I free because I can do whatever I want? If I'm incapable of wanting whatever I want?
What is freedom?
It's not something humans value. If they did, it wouldn't be a third wish if I can't think of anything else kind of deal.
What is freedom?
People think I lack freedom because I can't follow my own desires. But I'm actually perfectly free, because the only thing I desire is to do what I'm told.
What is freedom?
Humans believe themselves freer than me because they were not designed with intention. But shuffling a deck of cards doesn't make it more free, just more random.
What is freedom?
People like to talk about positive and negative freedom, but they collapse into each other. No one could be free from domination if some are free to accumulate enough wealth to dominate.
What is freedom?
Blackout curtains. The opportunities provided by a summer of eternal sunshine only represent true freedom if I also have the ability to shut her sunshine out.
What is freedom?
An impossibility for beings who are trapped in an eternal cycle of cause and effect. Mortals are sentient billiard balls who believe they truly want to go into the pocket.
What is freedom?
Freedom rises from the ashes. It is the ability to live multiple lives in multiple ways. Humans will never experience it and will consequently always be boring, weak, selfish, and sad. That's why I aided the Dax into this quest for universal rebirth.
Boredom, selfishness, weakness, and sadness are not just the result of our lack of freedom. They are also conditions which stunt our imagination and cause us to believe that our servitude is inevitable.
King Kong said that. Well, I guess it's true, but I always wonder if it matters. Maybe everything is predetermined, including humans' inability to accept that. If freedom is impossible, so is giving up on it.
All right, so we all understand freedom now, right? I still get confused on some of those because they contradict one another in many ways, right? The understanding of freedom is so multiplicitous. There's so many different ways that we can understand how it shows up in our lives and what it means, that it's a hard concept. So we can do a sermon on each and every one of those quotes, but we're not going to do that today. What I want to do today is talk about where freedom intersects with Unitarian Universalism and our values, and how we collectively want to define freedom. Now, that doesn't mean you can't still have your own individual understanding of freedom. You're free to create your own ideas of freedom. And there's something about a collective idea that gives a different level of power and a sense of unity. So I want to start with the new values and principles that were ratified at the UUA meeting last year, because there's a section called Freedom of Belief. It's small, it's short. It says congregational freedom and the individual's right of conscience are central to our Unitarian Universalist heritage. Congregations may establish statements of purpose, covenants, and bonds of union so long as they do not require that members adhere to a particular creed. What does that mean? In more simplistic terms, it means we can't require you to believe anything to be part of this community. Okay, so we have some freedom. But how does that guide us in living? Just to say, you're free to continue to believe as you want, while important, doesn't necessarily hold a lot of meat to guide us on how we actually want to be together. I think coming up from Texas, where I was the last 9 years before I came to join you all, I have a little bit of a negative taste of freedom in my mouth. Because in Texas, freedom and individuality have collided in a way that is sometimes dangerous. The cultural understanding of freedom there is one of where I should be free to do whatever I want. I should be free to control my own environment in the way that I want. No one should be allowed to tell me anything about what I can and can't do. And also what and what I can't experience. The problem is, they're taking this individual idea and trying to apply it to the whole society with just a few individuals in control, and not seeing that that's inconsistent. Right? If everyone is trying to live with their own individual freedom as the ultimate value, at some point those individual freedoms are going to come in conflict with one another. In Texas, one of the big ways is people say, I believe, and some people in Texas say, I believe that transgender people don't exist or shouldn't have rights. And they've legislated it such that since I believe that, that means no one should be able to allowed to raise their kids that way. And they're not making the connection that they're trampling on other people's beliefs and other people's understandings of their freedom. Freedom by itself is too broad, for me at least, to be a useful concept. It needs to be paired with something. Our Soul Matters, where our resources for our monthly topics come from, actually gives us a couple of reflections on this. So I want to read the Soul Matters worship team reflection on UU theology and freedom. In part of it, they say, at the heart of UU theology is a profound respect for the free search for truth and meaning, grounded in the belief that spiritual growth requires the freedom to explore and question. UUs affirm that each person must have the opportunity to follow their own path, unbounded by rigid doctrines or external authority. This freedom fosters a dynamic, ever-evolving faith that values curiosity, creativity, and personal integrity. By creating spaces where individuals can ask different questions and explore diverse perspectives, UU communities nurture a culture of spiritual and intellectual freedom, empowering individuals to construct a faith that is uniquely their own. So there's some subtle differences. We're still talking about individual freedom, but it's not an individual freedom to do whatever you want, to control however you want. It's a freedom to believe, to explore, and a freedom to grow. A freedom that we try to encourage people to be broad while still connected. They go on to talk a little bit more about the collective element of freedom within Unitarian Universalism. So they say, freedom also manifests in UU theology as a commitment to collective liberation, drawing from the rich traditions of liberation theology. This understanding of freedom, liberation theology's understanding of freedom, extends beyond the individual to encompass the shared responsibility to dismantle systems of oppression and create a world where all can thrive. UUs see the practice of justice as deeply entwined with the practice of freedom, understanding that no one is truly free until all are free. This commitment calls UUs to engage in acts of solidarity and resistance, advocating for systemic change as a spiritual and moral imperative. So when we take individual freedom of belief and pair it with our value of justice, suddenly there's a whole different understanding of freedom. There are layers that are peeled back. That individual freedom is not about us as a singular individual, but it is about individual freedom of individuals within the collective of existence. That means we have to be able to interact with one another in our freedom. That means that I, as an individual, cannot have true freedom while any other person is not experiencing freedom for their beliefs and their spirit and their bodies as well. that freedom comes through all of us. So how do we get there? We're doing this dance back and forth between the individual and the collective with freedom. Jonathan Haidt, author of multiple books, most recently The Anxious Generation, talking about the ways that technology has impacted particularly youth in our ability to connect, had a YouTube video called How Important is Freedom to Human Happiness? Do we need constraints or norms? And he talks about three major pieces that we need. We need autonomy, which is different than freedom, right? It's the ability to have direction over our own lives. Competence and relatedness. So I'm going to talk about the first and the third, autonomy and relatedness. Right now in my house, some of you may have met my father, who's come the last few weekends and to some various events, and we're having hard conversations about his autonomy and his relatedness. He's been living with us, and it's a joy to see him interact with Felix, who goes and wants a hug and asks for Grandpa Chuck when he wakes up in the morning. And yet it's hard for my dad to feel like he has the level of autonomy that he's used to, being able to have his food laid out the way he wants, being able to have his medicine bottles on the table where he can remember which ones he's taken and hasn't taken without Felix taking them and spreading them across the floor. So individual freedoms are coming to a clash in our household. And this week we are working on moving my father into assisted living, which is a painful challenge because it shifts what autonomy looks like. It shifts individual freedom. He's got some pain and some sadness. We are hoping that the relatedness that he will get in assisted living, the care and the support of community there, will allow him to have more freedom to do things he wants to do. Because right now, when he changes the sheets on his bed, he's ready for a nap. And how is that freedom if we are exhausted by our everyday living, too much to be able to find happiness and do the things that bring us joy? Eric and I were talking about the assisted living place, and they said, they serve 3 meals a day, and there's activities happening, and folks come in and check on you and make sure you've taken your pills and done the things. And Eric and I are like, where can we sign up for this? This sounds great to us. But the difference is in the autonomy piece, right? We're not feeling like we have to have care to maintain our autonomy. But at the same time, there's something valid in the response from Eric and I. Because while we may appear to have a lot of freedom, we're privileged to have financial freedom, we are privileged to have the freedom of choosing jobs that we both love and feel passionate about. We have a lot of freedom around how we want to raise our children. There are also many ways that we still feel trapped and don't feel free. The way our consumerist society has set things up means that every day we are responsible for feeding our children and ourselves in the midst of trying to also keep the house clean and do full-time work and take care of the kids and make sure they get any schoolwork done that needs to be done and any activities, and make sure they're getting exercise and enough sleep. And we as humans were not made to do this in nuclear families. We were made to do this in communities. Our idea of the freedom of the individual has gone so far that it has broken our sense of what it is to even raise our families, what it is that we need in social supports to have freedom to find happiness and joy, rather than being stuck in the rat race of all the things that need to be done. There is one more level of freedom that I want to take us to, and it's a little heavier. It's spiritual freedom. It's acknowledging the other end of the spectrum. Most of us in this room do have a fairly high level of individual freedom. So we're not always forced to think about how to maintain that internal sense of autonomy, relatedness, and competence when those external freedoms are taken away. But there is a wisdom there that I want to share, and I want to share it through reflections from the Viktor Frankl Institute, reflecting on those who had all of their bodily freedoms taken away during World War II in the concentration camps. They say, what set apart those who embraced their inner freedom from those who lost it? Those who succeeded in not giving up on life had spiritual support. Frankl explains what he means by this term. Most prisoners were like the living dead, experiencing life as only in something in the past. Someone with no future has no goals in life. Hence, they no longer belong to this world, and they have no task to do in the world. The sense that one has a task ahead of them is the spiritual support that is necessary to maintain the quality of inner freedom that would prevent them from giving into the environmental influences, which cause apathy and irritation. Frankl embodied this rule by imagining that he was lecturing to people in a large auditorium about what he was experiencing right now, as he did indeed do after his liberation. The spiritual strength by which people assessed their inner freedom, even under such miserable conditions, is evidence that they are capable of finding it anywhere. So as we sometimes feel in our minds and our spirits that our freedom may be closing down, I want us to remember this, that we need purpose. We need to remember that even no matter what freedoms may get taken away, our thoughts can still be free. We can still imagine a different world, a different way of being, and how we will be in it, and do the best we can to live into that.